Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. We're here live, and then I got a big, incredibly important nightly news this evening. They're launching a new propaganda effort to launch a full invasion of Central Africa and other areas. We're going to be breaking that down in some State Department propaganda we've discovered. We'll also be going more over this. But, you know, we can't get the military calls in because 9 out of 10 are people saying, well, I'm not military, I'm not current military, but I got a point I want to make. Folks, I'm going to institute full call screening if people just don't have basic respect here. You know, our country is in a deep crisis. I want to talk to current serving military and ask them if they're going to follow illegal orders and if they realize how treasonous this is to have a coup d'etat with the Secretary of Defense, the President, the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying they take their orders from the UN and NATO. I need to hear from them. I need to hear what the military's saying. And the phone systems, of course, when we give the number out, just blast with literally hundreds of calls a minute. And I'm not trying to be mad at people. I'm glad you want to call in and say something. We can do that after we talk to the military. But don't call right now if you're not active with the military because they can't get into the show. 800-259-9231. And, of course, no one will listen to me. You'll just be hung up on, though, folks. So knock yourselves out. We've got Sergeant National Guard and another National Guard, Zachary. And if anybody can get in, I know I always get calls from troops in Afghanistan and Iraq and at bases. I want to hear from you. Let's go to Zachary, and then we'll go to Dante. Zachary, you're on the air. What's your take on the publicly announced coup d'etat hidden in plain view of the UN and NATO over America?
A pretty sad day for the Republic there, Mr. Jones. But I have a book that I got from, it's the Soldier's Handbook while I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. TRADOC pamphlet 600-4, 1 October 2003. And it says, loyalty, bear true faith and allegiance to the U.S. Constitution, the Army, your unit, and other soldiers. It goes on to say, to be loyal is to be unswerving in allegiance to the Constitution and completely faithful to the lawful government. Our absolute allegiance and faithfulness prevents us from misplacing our loyalties. And that was 2-2. The next page, 2-3. A loyal individual does the following: respects the Constitution and laws, and it goes on. But the next page, there's a quote for all military members calling in. It says, duty, fulfill your obligations. This is page 2-5. There's a quote from General John A. Wickham, former Army Chief of Staff. He says, the essence of duty is acting in the absence of orders or direction from others based on an inner sense of what is morally and professionally right. And it goes on from that quote, duty delineates the sum total of all laws, rules, etc., that make up our organizational, civic, and moral obligations. Our values originate with duty because, at a minimum, we expect all members of the Army to fulfill their obligations. We often expect individuals to exceed their duty, especially in ethical matters. And this certainly is an ethical matter.
Well, let me back up. You know, that's from 8-9 years ago.
This was 2003, yes.
Yeah, I've seen and read on air stuff from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, where it's, if a president ever tries to use you domestically, they are a traitor and a tyrant. Congress is in control of the military. The president, only commander-in-chief, once given a duly, sworn bill of war, declaration of war. And so even what you're reading is okay, but nothing compared to the Constitution itself. Did you hear me earlier when I read from the Constitution where a president launching a military operation without full congressional authorization is engaged in a high crime and misdemeanor? I mean, though the Constitution tells you what it is, but look, it's bad enough to have a president saying, I do what I want militarily. Again, this is them saying the UN is the authority and NATO. I mean, the president saying that in the chain of command, see, until about 50 years ago, they taught, till about the Korean War, actually, they taught Congress is at the top of chain of command, then the president, then down to you. Since then, well, the president during a war, then they kind of blurred that. And then now, well, we get authorizations, not declarations. And then now they're saying, listen, Congress is like, but we are who gives you the authorization, correct? And the SecDef says, no, the UN. I'm going to play it here in a minute. But, I mean, what do you make of that? If that is just That is off the charts right there. I mean, just because it's the UN or NATO, how about saying Russia gives them the orders, or China, or you know, Martians for that matter? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? This is globalism. This is world government. This is a global government coup in our face, sir.
Absolutely, and as Mayor Amschel Rothschild said, give me the power to coin a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. And, of course, one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto is for a private central bank. The whole system is corrupt. Knowledge is power, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if that is true, and I'm certain it is, then the media would never tell us the whole truth to anything, because we might start to understand the true nature of our predicament. And thanks to you and your show and all the guests that you have on, we understand that humanity's under attack, and the whole bioethicist, eugenicist thing that you're talking about, hey, they've used the troops to test vaccines on us. There have been soldiers that had the full barrage of vaccinations over in Desert Storm, you know, that never went over, but yet they came down with the same Gulf War syndrome as soldiers who went over.
Oh, it's on record. Listen, and they lie to you and say, you don't have any rights, we're going to test experimental shots on you. They can only make you take totally approved vaccines. And there's only about 15 or so that are on the FDA recommended list. So when they test all this dengue fever and this and that and smallpox, anthrax shots, but it killed so many people dropped dead from the shots, they had to suspend both of those. But let me ask you this question. You're a sergeant in the National Guard. Obviously, you've got to know, and you're calling in. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Maine. Okay,
so you're calling in from Maine. All I know is around here they're having National Guard do checkpoints and show up at events to acclimate us. I mean, are you guys getting more riot control? Are you seeing evidence of them gearing you up for domestic operations?
Well, I can't really speak too much for that. I've worked crowd control at a naval base for an air show, but that's
one thing on a base is fine, yeah. But, I mean, you see, like, Army Times saying they're going to use the military domestically against citizens, right?
Oh, I've read it. I keep up to date with the stuff that you post, and certainly it was concerning seeing that kite festival that you posted there. And
here in Austin. Let me ask you this. Are the people in the military around you, in the Army, National Guard, are they starting to realize something's not right?
Well, yeah, there definitely is a vibe there. There's certainly some of us that are more awake than others, and certainly have questioned for quite some time now the official myth of September 11th and what went down on that day. And it's pretty obvious we're being lied to, and I commend all the work that you've done and the people that are speaking out to bring justice to what happened. And thank you for bringing that Syria blogger on the other day. It was great to listen to her and her perspective. And
let me ask you this question, Zachary, in closing, and we'll go to others. And I, again, appreciate you taking the time out to call. What should the military do? I mean, if I was in the military, especially an officer, because you got more responsibilities, as you know, to duty than just enlisted, and I've sworn an oath to protect the Constitution against enemies foreign and domestic, and the cornerstone of treason is a president declaring he controls the military, can do whatever he wants. And then it goes beyond that, saying foreign powers control him, which is even worse if it's possible. I mean, what country's ever had a president or leader that's an actual foreign agent? It's one thing to have your own dictator, but then the person taking on despotic powers is a foreign agent and says so to their bosses in the Congress. When it comes to military matters, you don't give the president the power of the military unilaterally because you can't be trusted with it. You've got to share that and have checks and balances. I mean, it is the worst case of out in the open treason I can imagine. And it's flaunted openly. And the New York Times has a little footnote about, there's a little fight between the legislative and executive about who runs things. It's like, the price of tea in China discussion, like it's no big deal. And then it's exhausting me mentally.
Oh, yeah, it is exhausting. But to answer your question there about, ideally what should be done is the example that was set a couple of weeks ago in Afghanistan with the Quran burning. You had all those people in the streets, protesting and voicing their, concerns over that. And it would never happen, but if people dressed in uniform went down to the federal buildings or wherever and had signs and uniforms and said it's treason. You know, have the quotes from the guy there, Panetta. You know, we don't answer to the UN. You know, if we get on the streets en masse and just said, hey, we've had enough, we're not doing it.
Well, I'll tell you where the digital streets are. YouTube, letters to the editor. And then if they try to go after somebody, you've got congressmen coming out saying it's a high crime. And you're like, look, my so-called commander-in-chief, who's not your commander-in-chief because there's no declared war, is telling me he gets orders from the UN. The UN and NATO is not in my chain of command. It doesn't command America. God bless you. I appreciate you calling. I mean, we've got, now that the gauntlet's down, I mean, they're not hiding this. And they're saying the UN runs America and that Congress doesn't count. I mean, come on. Congress in the House and Senate have finally introduced legislation saying we might impeach you. You've got to do that. I mean, even that corrupt body knows this. This is incredible. Can you imagine the Russians, as corrupt as their government is, coming out, a Russian president, and saying to the Duma, to their Congress, I'm going to launch a war in, say, Georgia or Chechnya or Ukraine or against Poland. And the Duma says, well, you didn't get authorization from us. And they say, oh, but I got it from the USA. Or I got it from China, or I got it from Bangladesh. I mean, it would be instantly, there'd be an outcry from the Russians. They'd be in the streets. The military would outcry. They would arrest Putin like that. Just boom. He'd be arrested or his helicopter would blow up. That's how the Russians do it. He would die. Alexander Lebed was caught sneaking around working with the West, and his helicopter blew up. But again, we're not dealing with puppet presidents here. Obama is just a little corporate whore, New World Order lawyer. It's a bunch of lawyers, man. And they create these international bodies and have traitors sign over. Like a lawyer stealing your portfolio, or you got a trust and the lawyer signs your house over to themselves. That happens all the time. That's what they've done. They just sign America over and sit there arrogantly like the pigs they are in front of Congress. And the Congress is like, well, we know we're just little sellout criminals that you've got blackmailed for insider trading, but don't publicly announce we don't run anything now. That's embarrassing. I want to feel powerful at the country club today playing golf. Panetta's like, yeah, you don't run jack squat, pal. I haven't even gotten to the video yet. It's at Infowars.com. I'm exhausted now. I don't know how I'm going to do the nightly news. I'm beyond angry. It is just, it's ridiculous. It's like, it'd be like if you're walking down the street and they had babies out live hanging by their feet and we're saying, hey, you want some fresh meat? And they were chopping babies up like fish with big meat cleavers. And everybody's just walking by with shopping bags going up and it's being wrapped in white paper. I mean, it's that crazy. And everybody just goes along with their business like, oh, it's no big deal. Secretary of Defense, Obama, all of them say the UN tell us what to do. It's nothing. And it's like England. 80+% of their laws are now made by foreign EU, which isn't even the EU countries. That's made by the bureaucracy. And the EU countries are being told now, foreign banks run us, and you have no national sovereignty. And the military and police are following orders, and NATO controls Europe and says they're the world army now. It's the global government army, and our army is part of it. And those generals sit there getting off on it and showing satisfaction when Panetta tells them, we take our orders from NATO and the UN. And I'm watching the generals, and I'm watching their adjuncts behind them and their minions, and they all look like Cheshire cats, so satisfied. Oh, man, these people are traitors. I mean, and I don't just use that word. These are enemies of our country.